There is a kind of man the world never writes books about. He does not appear in motivational posters. He is not the subject of TED Talks or the hero of corporate success stories. He wakes up before anyone else notices, makes his coffee in silence, and carries the weight of his own existence without asking for help, without expecting applause, and without the comfort of someone telling him that what he does matters. He is the man who became strong alone, not because strength was given to him, not because the universe conspired in his favor, but because there was no other option, because the floor was cold and the door was closed, and the only way forward was through and nobody was coming to show him the path. You have met this man. You may be this man. And if you are, then you already know that the kind of strength built in solitude feels nothing like the strength they sell you in self-help books. It does not feel like victory. Most days it feels like survival dressed in ordinary clothes, going through ordinary motions, carrying something invisible and immense. Charles Bukowski understood this, not as a concept, not as a philosophy borrowed from a library, but as a lived reality carved into his body across decades of failure, rejection, poverty, and the particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who cannot see you clearly. Bukowski was not a self-help guru. He was not interested in giving you a 5-step plan. What he offered was something rarer and more dangerous: the truth, the raw, uncombed, unpolished truth about what it actually costs to become yourself, to refuse the life that was handed to you and build something real from the wreckage of everything that did not work. His habits were not the habits of champions in the conventional sense. They were the habits of a man who looked at the machine of modern life and refused to be consumed by it, who chose the hard, unglamorous, deeply personal work of becoming strong on his own terms. Here is the first thing most people will never tell you about men who build themselves alone. The process is ugly. There is no montage. There is no moment where the music swells and the camera pulls back and you see the transformation complete. Instead, there are Tuesday mornings that feel identical to Monday mornings, weeks that blur into each other without visible progress, long stretches of time where everything you have built feels fragile and unconvincing. Bukowski wrote through all of it. He wrote on napkins, on the backs of envelopes, on whatever surface was available, not because writing made him feel powerful, but because it was the only thing that made the chaos inside him take a shape he could hold. This is the first habit of men who grow strong alone. They find the one thing that organizes the internal storm, and they do it relentlessly, not for praise, not for an audience, but because stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. The work becomes the anchor. The practice becomes the proof that they still exist, still think, still have something worth saying even when no one is listening. Bukowski spent years working jobs that ground him down. The post office, the factories, the endless repetitive labor that treats a human being as a unit of production with no interior life worth considering. And yet he did not let those years hollow him out completely. He observed, he absorbed, he took the indignity of ordinary labor and transformed it into material, into literature, into testimony. This is the second habit, the refusal to let experience go to waste. The man who becomes strong alone does not divide his life into the useful parts and the wasted parts. He understands that the wasted parts are often where the real education happens. The job you hated, the relationship that destroyed you, the years you spent in rooms too small for your ambitions. All of it is data. All of it is raw material. The man who survives alone learns to look at his own suffering without flinching and ask, what does this teach me? Not in a sentimental way, not in a way that softens the pain, but in the hard, clear-eyed way of someone who cannot afford to let pain be merely pain when it can also be understanding. There is a moment in every man's solitary development when he must make a choice that society will not applaud. It is the moment when he decides to stop performing the version of himself that other people find acceptable and start living the version that is actually true. Bukowski made this choice late, and then he made it completely. He did not ease into authenticity, he detonated into it. His poems were not carefully managed revelations. They were confessions delivered at full volume, without the cushion of irony or the protection of metaphor. He wrote about his ugliness, his desire, his weakness, his rage, his love, his fear, with a directness that made many people deeply uncomfortable, because directness in a man is often mistaken for aggression when it is actually the opposite of aggression. It is the abandonment of the performance that aggression requires. The man who becomes strong alone eventually stops pretending, not in a dramatic way, quietly. One day he simply stops apologizing for existing on his own terms. Now, before we go deeper into this, there is something important here. If you have ever felt like the strength you carry was built in silence, in rooms where no one watched, through years where no one celebrated the small victories or acknowledged the enormous cost of simply not giving up, this video is for you. I want you to go to the comments right now and write this: I built myself in silence, and I am still building. That sentence is not just for you, it is for every person who will watch this video after you and feel less alone when they see it. You are not alone in this. Your presence in the comments is proof that the kind of strength built in solitude is real, and it matters, and it deserves to be seen. What Bukowski understood, and what very few people talk about openly, is that the strength built alone is not the same as the strength built through validation. They are different substances. The strength that comes from external approval is real, but it is conditional. It depends on the approval continuing. The moment the approval stops, the strength wobbles. The strength built in solitude is structural. It has been tested by the absence of encouragement, by the silence of indifferent rooms, by the particular agony of doing the work when nobody cares, whether you do it or not. This is the strength Bukowski had. Not confidence, not in the cheerful sense, something darker and more solid, the knowledge that he had already survived the worst version of his own life and had continued writing through it. You cannot take that away from someone. You cannot flatter it away or shame it away. It is built into the foundation. The third habit of men who become strong alone is the cultivation of a fierce and unapologetic relationship with solitude. Not loneliness, which is solitude experienced as deprivation, but solitude chosen, solitude used, solitude understood as the only environment in which certain kinds of truth become visible. Bukowski was not a social creature in the conventional sense. He was capable of profound connection. His letters prove this. His poems about women prove this. But he needed long stretches of being alone in order to hear himself think clearly. The modern world is engineered to prevent this. Every device, every notification, every platform is designed to fill the silence before silence can become productive. The man who becomes strong alone must resist this with something close to militancy. He must protect his solitude the way a writer protects his manuscript, jealously, stubbornly, knowing that what happens in those quiet hours is not wasted time but the most important work of his life. There is a fourth habit that Bukowski embodied without ever naming it explicitly, and it is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all: the acceptance of failure as a permanent condition of meaningful living. Not failure as a temporary obstacle on the road to success, which is how the motivational industry packages it, but failure as the natural texture of a life lived honestly. Bukowski failed constantly. He was rejected by publishers for years. He worked jobs he despised. He drank too much. He made choices that cost him relationships and stability and the kind of ordinary comfort most people take for granted. And yet he produced thousands of poems, 6 novels, hundreds of short stories, a body of work that outlasted every editor who rejected him and every critic who dismissed him. The man who becomes strong alone does not wait for failure to end before he begins. He works inside the failure. He writes the poem in the apartment he cannot afford. He does the thing that matters while the thing that does not matter threatens to consume him. The fifth habit is honesty carried to the point of discomfort. Not honesty as virtue, not honesty as a moral choice made to feel superior to liars, but honesty as a survival mechanism, as the only way to stay oriented in a world that rewards performance over substance. Bukowski's work is honest to the degree that it makes you wince. He does not sanitize his desires or soften his cruelties or make himself more sympathetic than he actually was. He gives you the man as he was, difficult and brilliant and broken and real. This kind of honesty requires enormous courage because the world punishes it. Employers want performance. Relationships often want the performed version. Society wants you to smile at the appropriate moments and express the appropriate emotions and never admit that you are struggling in ways that fall outside the acceptable categories of acceptable struggle. The man who becomes strong alone refuses this. He allows himself to know what he actually feels, and then he allows that knowledge to inform how he lives, even when the knowledge is inconvenient. What changes in a man when he finally stops waiting for the world to recognize his strength and simply inhabits it without permission? Everything and nothing. The apartment is the same. The job may be the same. The people around him may not notice any visible difference, but inside, something has settled. There is a quietness that was not there before, not the quietness of defeat, but the quietness of someone who has stopped fighting a war that was always imaginary. The war to prove himself to people who were never really watching, who were too occupied with their own wars to witness his. Bukowski arrived at this quietness through whiskey and poetry and the particular mercy of being too stubborn to quit. You may arrive there differently, but the destination is the same. The moment when your own life becomes enough authority. When you stop needing the world to confirm what you already know about yourself. The final habit, the one that ties all the others together, is continuation. It is not glamorous. It does not make a good story in the traditional sense. It is simply the decision, made again every morning, to continue writing when the writing is bad, to continue working when the work feels pointless, to continue becoming yourself even when the self you are becoming is imperfect and ungrateful, and nothing like the self you imagined when you were younger and more naive about what growth actually costs. Bukowski continued for decades before the world paid attention. He continued when attention was nowhere near. And when the attention finally came, he did not change what he was doing. He continued exactly as before because the continuation was never about the attention. It was about the necessity of the work itself, the irreducible fact that some things must be done regardless of whether anyone is watching, regardless of reward, regardless of outcome. If this landed somewhere real in you, if something in these words touched the part of you that has been building in silence and wondering whether it matters, do something simple and important. Hit the like button, not as a habit, not automatically, but as a deliberate gesture that sends this message forward to someone who needs it. Every like tells the algorithm that this conversation matters, and that matters because somewhere right now there is a man sitting alone in a room who has never heard that the way he is living has a name, has a philosophy, has been written about by one of the greatest raw voices in literary history. Your click can reach him. Finally, if you are the kind of person who is tired of content that flatters you and wants content that actually asks something of you, subscribe to this channel. Every video here is made for the person who builds in silence, who carries weight without complaint, who refuses the comfortable lie in favor of the uncomfortable truth. This is your space. Come back for it.